Hi, Maja. Welcome
Hi,
to the Neurodivergent podcast.
thank
Um,
you.
Maja Toudal is a clinician, a speaker. She's autistic herself. She's a mother. And I've met her at the Autism-Europe conference where she had a talk about energy accounting. And we're going to get to know Maja first a little bit, and then she's going to tell us all about energy accounting.
Excellent.
Um, so, Maja, when did you first hear about autism?
I actually first heard about autism when I was diagnosed myself.
Mm-hmm.
And this was back in the spring of 2003.
Mm-hmm.
I was 16 and um, I'd always known that I was different, but I had no idea how or why,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And then I went through this rather long assessment because back then, autism autism related diagnoses were very much thought of as boys' diagnoses. So
Mm-hmm.
it was a very long process for me to get my diagnosis. And it wasn't actually until after they set the diagnosis that I even found out why I was going to these assessments. I had no idea what was going on.
Okay.
I was just going to this office and talking to these random people.
So
So
someone at school told you you got to see this person, and then you went there and.
no. My mother sent me,
Mm-hmm.
um, so it doesn't exist anymore, but back then it was called School Psychiatric Center, and
Mm-hmm.
it was tied into the school system a little bit. And once you were out of the school system, that was no longer an option.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so back then, my mother was like, okay, I have to somehow find out what's going on before Maya's out of school, you know?
Yeah, makes sense.
Um, and so she was the one that pushed it through, and I didn't know why I was going. I didn't know what the point of it was.
Mm-hmm.
I was just okay, I guess I'm gonna talk to these people. And I remember kind of hating it because I didn't know what was going on and it felt silly.
Mm-hmm.
You know, why am I telling all these strangers about myself? And why are we talking about these things? It didn't make sense. And then I got my diagnosis, and then it was actually my mother who explained to me that I had been diagnosed. So I didn't even get the news from the psychologists and the doctor.
Okay, that's quite a
Yeah.
unique setting.
Yeah.
And did that give you some kind of release from the frustration you felt having to go to these people when you found out what it was all about? Or was that like, okay, now I have this word, what do I do with it?
Um, I mean, it did make it make sense, but I think I was more so relieved that I didn't have to go anymore because I hadn't enjoyed it, you know.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I remember feeling this sense of both relief that it had a name, this
Mm-hmm.
feeling that I had,
The
and
feeling of being
also,
different.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
because I had just called myself weird and different.
Mm-hmm.
But this kind of, okay, so all of these things that I've been going through, it has a name.
Mm-hmm.
So there was that sense of relief, but then at the same time, I had a lot of grief that the fact that it had a name meant that so many other people must have had the same experience and must have suffered as much as I had.
Mm-hmm.
And I was so sorrowful that other people were suffering as much as I was.
Mm-hmm.
So it was relief and grief at the same time, actually, getting diagnosed.
So that's an origin story.
I guess so.
And so then you set out to make sure that future generations would not have to go through that.
Well, no, because I was 16. So
Yeah, I mean,
first thing I
later
did
down the
was
road. But it seems like it sounds like that might have been your inspiration to do it.
um I at the time I felt so powerless.
Yes,
I
yes,
had, you know,
yeah, I totally understand. But
I didn't, so I had gone through so much chronic depression
hmm
by then that I just wanted to dig myself into a hole and never
hmm
come out, you know? And so I didn't I got the okay, it has a name, but I don't really want to hear anything else about it because I didn't have the space
hmm
to know more
hmm
at the time. And then 3 years later, I was diagnosed with an attention disorder, anxiety, and depression.
hmm
And at that time, I got to know Kirsten Callison. Back then, she was my psychologist. Now she's
hmm
my colleague.
hmm
Um, and it was her actually that planted the idea that I could do something, that I could make a difference.
hmm
Yeah,
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 fascinating. We have quite a similar origin story.
yeah,
Yeah, I got my diagnosis in 2006. By
yeah.
that time, I must have been around 26 or 27.
Hmm?
Um, and I also have someone who used to work with me in the sense, I would, what's the word? I would use support services.
Hmm.
In Germany, it's called BEWO, betreutes Wohnen, so assisted living.
Hmm.
That is one of the vehicles you can get support um, as an autistic person. And
Hmm.
um, I I have a mentor turned partner who worked for the agency that provided the support for me, and she eventually invited me to do some speeches,
Yeah.
and eventually we worked out a workshop together,
Hmm.
and yeah, we still do that today, and
Hmm.
we sometimes travel to conferences together and things,
Yeah.
and
Very much the same thing.
yeah, and I also have this thing where I was not very happy with how my education, how my time in school went,
Mm.
and um, yeah, that kind of motivated me to make a difference in that field. Okay, so
Hmm.
you managed to properly finish school, and then you studied psychology.
Yeah, so that was a that was a very abnormal journey.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, so in Denmark we have our elementary school goes up to ninth and then optionally 10th grade.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that normally. I did that the typical way. Um, and then what usually comes after that is gymnasium or HF, um, some form of education that gives you access to further education, to
Mm-hmm.
university or whatnot. And that is usually either 2 or 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I did not start that. I was burnt out from going to school. I couldn't I couldn't be in that system anymore.
Hmm.
Um, and so I actually was away from school for a couple of years, 3 years, something like that. I don't know. I went to something called production school for a time, which is
Hmm.
it's not a school. It's more so uh, a place for the social outcasts to go. And there are some adults there, and then at least we know the kids are, you know, not just roaming around the streets.
Is that a rather rough place?
In a lot of places, yes, it can
Hmm.
be.
Yeah,
Um,
we have the same thing in Germany where in schools, so there are certain schools that take on more engaging students,
mhm.
and there's the marker emotional social, which is one that uh, that uh, well, technically it applies to autistic kids, but it
Mm,
means that the autistic kids get thrown in with very rough kids,
okay.
and that
Yeah,
doesn't
this
that's
is
not
this is
always
not
the
diagnosis dependent at
yeah.
all. This is just if you're done with elementary but you don't really know what you're doing,
Hmm.
this is something you can sign up for. And I don't know even if it still exists, honestly.
Hmm.
They may have changed it around a lot. There are a lot of options for what you can do. But there's only one way to get into university. And so I didn't I didn't decide to become a psychologist until Kirsten told me that that was even an option because I
Hmm.
hadn't thought, oh, this is something I could do. I thought I'm just going to survive for as long as I can. And then I guess I'm going to die. Like, like I had no hope for my future at all. None. I couldn't even conceive of it.
Yeah.
But she was the same as you, really. She was taking me to do these presentations, these Q&As for parents, parent groups. And one day she's like, you should be a psychologist. And it blew me away, honestly, because like I said, I had no hope for my future. And this is the first time in my life that an adult who I trusted, but who wasn't my family, told me that there was something I could do.
Hmm.
And and so her saying it, I believed it. I believed it was possible. And it just kind of planted itself. And then I was like, okay, well, I guess I have to go back to school then. And so I did. And back then, now they're actually phasing out this as an option. But one of the educations you can take to get into university, HF, you used to be able to do one subject at a time.
Hmm.
So you could space it out over a very long period.
Oh no, so you
And
can focus on just one thing.
yes, yes. And so, as I alluded to, at the time, I had very little capacity to attend school or to do anything. And so I started attending school um, like 5 or 6 hours a week.
Hmm.
And then I upped it slowly over time. And it ended up taking me 7 years total
Hmm.
to do this HF. Um, and it was very stressful for me because I was going back to school, which was the one place that had brought me the most stress in my life. Um, I don't like being in that setting, in part because of the bullying history and all of that.
Hmm.
I enjoy learning. I just don't like school, which is
Makes a
very
lot of
typical
sense,
for
yes.
autistic kids, really. Yeah. So it took me 7 years.
Hmm.
And then I had my exam to get into university.
Okay,
And so
so
then I did university. Yeah. So it ended up being a much longer route
mhm.
than for most people.
So I have this theory about maturing in autistic youth. Let me know
Hmm.
what you think. So for your neurotypical child, when they are 18, 19, they're
Hmm.
somewhat mature in the sense that I think they can abstract enough to make certain life choices.
Hmm.
And I would argue that for autistic youth at 18, 19, it's not like they're immature, so they might be very mature in regards, let's say, philosophy, thinking, expressing
Hmm.
themselves. But I think they lack a certain ability to integrate many things into one abstraction. And so they will have a hard time um, deciding I'm going to go to university or I'm going to get a job
Hmm.
education because um, they kind of lack the ability to integrate it all and to abstract it, think about it, make decisions on it. And I would argue that it might take them up to 25 or something like that to be able to have that agency in decision making for large decisions like that.
Hmm.
Is that is that
I
some?
don't know. I don't know if I entirely agree. Um, Firstly, because I don't think neurotypical 18, 19-year-olds are mature, really. I think we force them to be. Um, and I
Mm-hmm.
think I think perhaps they tend to be less traumatized by that age,
Mm-hmm.
which means they have a larger capacity for handling those demands.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I I think what I see with autistic youth is they tend to have that combination of being simultaneously 40 and 10.
Yeah. I know what you mean.
And so there are moments or areas in which they have so much nuance and so much depth and so much reflection, that it's like talking to a grown up.
Mm-hmm.
But then in other moments or other areas of thinking or feeling, um, it's like, no, you're actually 5 to 10 years behind your real age.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I do see generally that by around 25 to 30, like during the late 20s, is when we tend to catch up a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I
S-
mean,
So
that is
you,
the younger part tends to catch up because the being 20 years older than you are, that doesn't stop.
hmm so okay, so you can kind of agree to the time frame. You would just assess the features a little differently.
Yeah, I think so.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I see it's not a difference in the capacity for thinking or integrating or making decisions necessarily. It can be in some cases,
Mm-hmm.
but I just also very often see, um, having been traumatized or chronically stressed throughout childhood, to a degree that the world is terrifying in a way that it just isn't for neurotypicals.
Hmm.
And the thought of what am I going to do with my life in the world that exists is terrifying. Like we can't imagine our place in this world.
Hmm. I remember that when I finished school, I did not know at all what to do.
Mm-hmm.
I know that my mother wanted me to go to university, and I had the school diploma that would allow me to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But picking the right field
Yeah.
and things like that, I felt like I had no clue on how to assess and how to make those
Mm-hmm.
decisions.
Yeah, but also, I mean,
But now I'm thinking, was that because of anxiety rather than a lack in ability to abstract these things?
mm, I mean, there is also I think there's a degree of needing the predictability. So when I take this education, what's on the other side of that? What is that job actually?
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, so I'm going into psychology, for example, or I'm going into um, engineering. What does an engineer do?
Mm-hmm.
How am I supposed to know what I'm accepting when I choose that line of study?
Mm-hmm.
And and I think that's where maybe the level of abstraction comes in because we have a higher need to see what we're going into. And I think for many autistic people, children and young people especially, we've lost the beauty of mentorship. In Danish, it's called Mesterlære, master learning. So
Mm-hmm.
it's mentorship and apprenticeship,
Mm-hmm.
actually going into a line of work, seeing what is happening, learning in the field. I think for us, that's actually very important.
Yeah.
And for me, a part of what solved it, because I was going in to study psychology, but I actually had the unique privilege of being invited to Australia to observe at Tony Attwood's clinic for a month
Oh, very nice.
before I even started my psychology studies.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that 1 month of just being in the clinical setting, and it wasn't full time, it was a couple of days a week, but it was just that opportunity to see clinical work happening. And I mean, sometimes they would ask, what do you think? Do you have a perspective on this? Just as an autistic person. Um, but just seeing the work being done made it much more clear to me, okay, so this is something I can do with this education that I'm going into.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't feel scary because now I tried it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And so I think apprenticeship is something that, uh, because it's been phased out so much in large parts of the world, that actually makes life more difficult for us.
Yeah, I think it definitely plays a role in the rise of diagnosis these days because I also agree there used to be more job niches for
Hmm.
people like us.
Yeah.
So just just manual labor, think of a clockmaker.
Hmm.
That would be a very good job for a certain type of autistic person.
Oh, yeah.
You work in your own setting. You work at your own pace. You do very delicate work that needs high focus. But nowadays, a lot of that is probably done by machines.
It's robots.
Yeah, and then
And now we're seeing it happen with programming and AI as well.
I'm not so
Um,
convinced of that yet.
I don't think AI can replace good programmers.
Yeah,
But I do see and I hear the complaints from autistic people I know who are programmers and who are very good at their jobs. Um, what I hear from them is that the bosses think AI can replace them.
yeah, that's going to
And
be a problem. Yeah,
that's the fear. That's the fear I have right now is
yeah,
you think you can replace us, but you can't.
yeah. I I watch a lot of podcasts regarding AI, and
Mm.
there's one podcaster who talks about how AI is going to become a god,
Oh no.
and I don't think it's going to become a god, but I think there's definitely going to be people who believe it is,
Yeah.
and that's going to be enough to give it godlike status to some
Yeah.
degree. Yeah. Anyways,
There's a
um,
lot happening there. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Um, um, no, I lost my
Anyway.
thread a little bit. Um, where were we before we went to AI? Oh yeah, yeah. You talked
Education.
about the relationship between a master and his apprentice. I think
Hmm.
that's also something that we lost, or we haven't lost it entirely, but it has become a lot rarer. So just imagine this kind of person who has like a workshop or something, and he himself might be a bit of a weird person, bit of a one of a kind, and he takes
Hmm.
someone in, and they have an intricate one-on-one relationship,
Yep.
and you have the older mentor who's willing to teach and to show, and you have the younger person looking in for direction. That is a
Hmm.
good setting for autistic people to grow into a competence of a job
Hmm.
that will then, you know, give
Yep.
them a
It is.
status, give them an income,
Yep.
uh, and I think a lot of these structures have become less, and we have more corporate things where a certain sense of conformity is expected,
Hmm.
where it's a lot harder for autistic people to thrive.
Yeah. I agree.
Um,
And also we're expected to work so many hours.
mhm.
Um, I see such a difference between not even my parents' generation, but even the in-between generation. Um, I really see such a difference in how many hours you had to work in order to make life livable. And so now, if you're a young autistic person and you don't have that jumping board into learning a specialized field because those are disappearing, and you have a hard time maybe going to school because that setting is really rough, how are you going to end up making anything other than minimum wage? What does life look like when you imagine it?
I think for autistic people, a good thing is a mixture between a steady job and a self-employment,
Mm-hmm.
because I realized
Yeah.
I can really work a lot, but I cannot work 40 hours at a steady job.
No.
That will totally drain me. But
Mm-hmm.
I can do a steady job, like maybe at 50% of the hours. And but then I'll be working afterwards, just I'll be working on my own terms. And that makes all
Yeah.
the difference.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah.
Mm.
Uh, anyways, to kind of close off this part,
Yeah.
um, I wanted to ask you shortly about your relationship with the with the word Asperger's. You, just like me, were diagnosed with
Asperger's syndrome.
F84.5, Asperger syndrome of the
Yeah.
DSM-4. And your first
Yeah.
book initially had the name Asperger's in it, but you dropped
Mhm.
it in when it was
And
republished.
yeah. Yeah, I did.
So,
Yeah, so I mean, okay, so Denmark is actually still under the diagnostic system ICD-10.
mhm.
So
Yeah, we have in
Asperger,
Germany as well.
yeah,
Is the
and
ICD-11 even ready yet?
it should be. It should
Okay.
be. And I know that it's actually been translated into Danish and the translation has been validated.
Okay,
Um,
let me explain shortly. So the DSM is the diagnostic manual for internationally classified diseases. Is that
no,
correct?
international classified diseases, that's the ICD.
Oh, okay.
DSM is the system that America uses, research tends to use that system,
Mm-hmm.
and some other countries do as I think England does, but I'm honestly not sure. But DSM is that classifies psychiatric diagnoses only,
Mm-hmm.
whereas the ICD system is actually all diseases.
Mm-hmm.
So that goes like anything you can suffer from that will land you in a hospital or with the doctor, all of that is in ICD,
Mm-hmm.
which means that the DSM system is updated more frequently than the ICD is. And so the DSM system was updated from DSM-4 to DSM-5 in 2013.
Mm-hmm.
And that is where the DSM system dropped Asperger's syndrome, infantile autism, and just went into autism spectrum disorder.
Mm-hmm.
And then it says level one, two, three, which is a classification of
Oh,
your
that's
the
where
level
that's
of your
coming
support needs.
from. That's in the DSM. I was aware of everything you just said,
Hmm.
except for the level one, two, three part.
Hmm.
And recently, I've seen it a lot on the internet that people are
Hmm.
talking about different levels of autism.
Yeah.
And
Um,
I thought that was something that someone made up, but
no,
that
it's
derives from
in
the okay.
yeah, it's in the DSM-5. So the levels refer to your support needs. So it's level one. Level one tends to be more so what we used to call Asperger's syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lower level of support needs in
Mm-hmm.
quotations. It's basically less obvious support needs
Mm-hmm.
mostly. Level two is you've definitely got some support needs. We need to put some extra supports in here beyond what we need for level one. And then level three is more so infantile autism, classic autism. It may refer to someone who is non-speaking, someone who perhaps also has an intellectual disability, um, where we have some really obvious support needs and the level of supports that we need to put in place to make this person uh, to give them a safe life, that they don't end up on the streets
Mm-hmm.
or whatever. Um, Basically, it's a larger bag of money that we need to put there. No, but it's so cynical to think of it in that way, but that's just what we're dealing with in these psychiatric systems is that very often a diagnosis is what gives you access to support, and thereby it's about how much money should the government expect
Yeah, yeah.
that this will
That's
cost.
always how I explain diagnoses. Diagnoses are a means of distributing money. Uh,
Yes. basically.
in medicine, you always
Yeah.
work with limited resources, and you
Yeah.
need to uh, supply these resources in the most efficient way possible.
Mhm. And the
Um,
interesting part about the levels of autism in DSM-5 is that the DSM-5 does acknowledge that support needs can change.
mhm. Oh, that's
So
good.
you may get a diagnosis of ASD level 1,
Hmm.
but there may be times of your life where you are a level 2
Hmm.
because your support needs change. Or you may be diagnosed at level 2 and then over time it becomes level 1, maybe for a period of time, maybe for a longer period of time. Like it's that acknowledgement that life isn't stagnant, people
Hmm.
aren't stagnant. Things can change.
Hmm.
Um, and that is an interesting thing to have in a diagnostic system because it does acknowledge something very real. I also sometimes worry that it can be abused because then if your level of autism gets lowered diagnostically, that may take away the supports that actually made you function.
Yeah.
So there are some worries tied to that.
Yeah. When you spelled it out, I was thinking to myself, yes, sounds
Yeah.
good if in
But
responsible hands.
yeah, exactly.
Um,
Um, but then the ICD-10, which is still in use in many countries. So the ICD is international as well.
yeah.
It's the International Classification of Diseases. Okay.
Yeah, that's
So
kind of the thing that I wanted to point towards. It's usually like
yeah.
the DSM gets updated and then eventually the ICD follows. Is
Yeah. Yeah, but it doesn't necessarily just follow because there are differences.
yes.
Yeah. Um, okay, so the ICD-10 is from 1994.
Mm-hmm.
Let's first acknowledge that. And the ICD-10 is still in use.
Mm-hmm.
This is where we have Asperger's syndrome, infantile autism, you have developmental disorder, other, uh, all of these. I know them in Danish, so if I mistranslate, I apologize for that. But
No problem.
I just know this system in Danish because that's what we use.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the ICD-11 is from like I think the English version came out in like 2021 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But then the trouble is, in order to actually incorporate it and implement it in use in various countries, you have to translate it. But you can't just translate it because then you have to also check if the translation is correct against the original language.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is something that's so important that if you mistranslate something, it can have massive
Yes.
repercussions. So it takes a long time,
Mm-hmm.
not just to update, because there are so many diseases and disorders and whatnot that have to be uh, re-examined with each update. But then also the translations take more time because you can't just translate it. And then you can talk about implementing it.
Mm-hmm.
And in ICD-11, they do also go to autism spectrum disorder, but it's different than DSM-5.
Mm-hmm.
It is different. And I have some concerns with DSM-5, but I definitely also have some concerns with ICD-11. And I'm not sure it's better. It's
Yeah.
better in some ways, but it's also not. It's a long, complicated discussion, honestly.
Yes, it is. I
Um,
think
but
the
then, but then going back to the question about Asperger's syndrome
mm-hmm.
and do I have a problem with that? Um, no, not really.
Okay.
That's the diagnosis that we had at the time. Um, the name obviously has become attached to the connotations of the person that described, like Asperger's syndrome was described by Hans Asperger, and his history has come out in recent years,
Yeah.
and we know more about who he was and what he maybe believed and some of the things he did. And and so that's not great. I can disagree a lot with the person and where it came from, but I got the diagnosis I got. I can't change that. I know that I would also get the new diagnosis.
Hmm.
Like if I was reevaluated, I would just have autism spectrum disorder. I call myself autistic because the word Asperger's is outdated. But the fact that that's my diagnosis officially is like a footnote to me
Hmm.
because, okay, that's what it says on the paper, but I am autistic because it's the same thing.
Well, um, when I got my diagnosis, I was a bit desperate and I put all the other psychiatric diagnoses that I had into
Mm-hmm.
Google.
Mm-hmm.
And then I found Google gave me a website that said these are the most common misdiagnoses for autism.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then went to a self-help group, kind of diagnosed myself, eventually
Mm-hmm.
let a doctor give a second opinion, and he
Mm-hmm.
agreed.
Yeah.
And so for me, the name came to me at a point where I was at a low,
Mm-hmm.
and it promised hope. So to
Yeah.
me, the word was initially something very positive, and I feel like that now it is demanded of me to change my stance,
Mm-hmm.
but I haven't really come to terms yet with how I think about what has been discovered about him. Um, from what
I
from what
I'll
I
admit I just haven't gone into it that much because to me, if we found out that the man who discovered Huntington's disease was an awful person,
Mhm.
would that mean that Huntington's disease was something different?
Yeah,
No.
I feel the same as you. I also feel like I have a very what's the English word? Um, yeah, I feel like I have very little emotions attached to things like that.
Mm. I mean, to
And
me, it's also a difference between are we putting the person on a pedestal for making this fantastic discovery, or are we just, well, that happens to be the name of this diagnosis, and
yeah,
that person was the first to describe it, and woohoo, yay, good for them. He's dead now.
yeah, and also
Um,
it was his work didn't even have much impact because he was part of that regime that failed.
mm.
Um,
It did have impact, but much, much later.
yeah, yeah, I was going to say something about that. His first of all, the significant part of his work he did before he did the bad stuff, and it was Lorna Wing, right, who
Hmm.
rediscovered him. So
Hmm.
his work becomes significant in the 90s when he is rediscovered, and one might argue that the framing and or reframing that Lorna Wing put on it is the thing that actually made it.
That's the thing that actually mattered.
Yeah.
That's the thing that really made the impact.
So
Yeah,
it's
I
more
agree. I
a
agree.
secondary interpretation of his work that actually,
Yeah.
but it has his name on it. Yeah. I used to
It
like,
has his name on it, and I'm like, I've gone away from the linguistics of Asperger's syndrome,
hmm
but it's not, I don't attach value to it in that way. But I never did because I never had that Aspie supremacy thinking that
oh,
was the
you
problem.
mean like that Aspies are better than
Yeah.
Kenners or whatever?
No, but like it used to there used to be this uh, there used to be this narrative that being an Aspie was better than being autistic
Okay.
because okay, so this actually comes from the most annoying misunderstanding ever. I could go on a rant, but basically, because of the way Asperger's syndrome was described and the diagnostic criteria that differentiates Asperger's syndrome from infantile autism in the ICD,
Yeah,
very
okay.
often, very often what tends to happen is that um, so if you have language delay, any language delay, like language development delay, that's infantile autism in the ICD-10 system.
hmm
If you do not have language delay, that's Asperger's syndrome
hmm
because language delay is a diagnostic criteria for infantile autism,
Yes.
right? And it just so happens that language delay is sometimes related to intellectual disability, sometimes, not always. And I really want to emphasize that because
hmm
speaking later or not speaking is not necessarily indicative of your intelligence. I also really hate the whole concept of IQ and intelligence because it's what do we mean? We're really bad at actually defining that. But
Yes. I also
that's a
want to
whole
point
other
out that
discussion.
I also want to point out that there's autistic people out there who choose not to speak. It's not a
Yes.
disability at all. It's a choice.
Mhm. Yeah. And again, not indicative of intelligence,
hmm
but sometimes there is a connection between language delay and intellectual disability. And that fostered the myth that if you have infantile autism, you were less intelligent,
hmm
and that if you had Asperger's syndrome, then you were somehow more intelligent.
hmm
Or at least it was like, and this actually even goes back to when I got my diagnosis, it was that infantile autism meant that you had average or lower intelligence, and Asperger's meant that you had average or higher,
Yeah,
which was a complete misunderstanding, a complete myth. It's not actually true, but that kind of sparked this narrative that
hmm
being Asperger's or being Aspie was better than being autistic. And some people really took it to heart, and it became this thing of like Aspie pride, but in a very uh, almost in the same way as like white supremacy.
Yeah, I know what you're getting at.
And
I'm just
so
glad I never got in touch with people who actually
yeah. And I never
to
was
them
either.
that
But
was
I
real.
saw the narrative
Yeah.
happening. And the thing is, I never bought into that. I always thought, these people talking about Asperger's being the next stage of human evolution and yada, yada, yada. Like, it just never clicked for
I
me.
I I think that the autism diagnosis, especially
Mm,
today, is
hmm
very attractive to certain types. I'd argue cluster B type
Mm.
personality disorders, histrionic personality disorder, narcissistic personality disorder, because um, autism fits with some of the things that they have, but it's
Mm.
also an attractive diagnosis for some reason. Um,
But at the same time, I think it depends on your age group because I see so many children being bullied
mhm,
about autism. Like in for children, autistic, autist, autism, those are derogatory terms.
mhm,
Um,
okay.
in a lot of schools and online.
Mhm,
And then I think in adults, maybe it's slightly different. And I think a lot of people would rather have an autism diagnosis than they would want to have a personality disorder diagnosis,
mhm,
in part because there's so much stigma attached to a personality disorder
mhm.
diagnosis. So much.
Yeah, and for some reason, I mean, autism and ADHD have become really attractive. I mean, we're
Oh,
living
yeah.
through this wave
Hmm.
on social media where
Yeah.
like everybody's like, I have autism, I have ADHD.
Hmm.
I I I don't really I've never really understood. I mean, I've always been aware that autism has a certain attraction for people.
For some
Um,
people. Yeah.
yeah, like in different capacities. So I
Mm.
will meet
Yeah.
people. I will meet new people. They'll ask
Mm.
what I do. I tell them I work with autistic people, and it's like, oh, you work with
Mm.
autistic children, and
Mm.
there's always
Yeah.
this,
That's so interesting.
yeah, that kind of thing.
Mm.
Or I
And
tell
it
them,
is interesting, but
yeah,
it's
but
the
but
tone. It's the tone that's weird.
there's other fields that are interesting too, and you don't get that
Mm.
kind of reaction.
Yeah.
Uh, and
Yeah.
and um, yeah, so I I don't fully grasp why everyone wants to be autistic these days or wants to have ADHD. Um, wants to have a label like that that they have that is attached to them.
I mean, I think okay, it's a larger cultural discussion, and I don't know if I'm right. But from my experience and my observation, um, I feel like actually there's less room to be different today than there was 20, 30 years ago. And not so in the sense that if you were different, you weren't bullied back then, because of
Mm-hmm.
course you were, but there's even less room to be different now. Like it has to be labeled in order to be acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's more accepted in a lot of groups of young people to not be cisgendered and to not be heterosexual
Mm-hmm.
now. But almost every other kind of being different, aside from those, um, it has actually become less accepted. It's a narrowing of what is culturally acceptable. Even in fashion, there's less.
Would you say
There are fewer differences in fashion.
would you say, like, if, I'm really not an expert on fashion, but
Mm.
I noticed, or it seems to me that there's more conformity in fashion. Would you argue
Yeah.
that it
I mean that's
you
what I
can be
see. I
this
don't know if
style
I'm
and you
right.
can be that style or you can be
Yeah.
that style, but if you have your very own unique style, then you'll
Mhm.
get looked at funny. Which would you say it's that?
Unless you then have a diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
because then you can say, oh, I'm different because I'm autistic. And then suddenly, oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
I
I
think
guess that makes sense.
it's like if you have a simple explanation for why you're different, it can be a little bit more accepted, certainly once you get into the teen years.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know. I don't know. But I think there's also just we have this desire to label everything. And I had a discussion with a colleague at one point who who informed me that 10% of the Danish population between the ages of 18 and 25, 10%
Mm-hmm.
have a prescription for ADHD medication.
Okay.
And
That's a lot.
and this colleague of mine is like, that doesn't seem legitimate somehow. Like something has to be off. Is it? It's not necessarily that there are more neurodivergent brains or more neurominority brains now than there used to be, but somehow we've made it so impossible to function without medication that so many more people need it? Or have we made a culture in which teachers react much more strongly to nonconformity in class, and they're like, well, what if we medicate this child? And then we end up with so many more.
I think all the points that you made are valid,
I don't
but
know. I
but
don't have the answers. I also see that there are so many people getting diagnoses,
mm-hmm.
and there are so many people seeking diagnoses on the basis of, I saw this reel online and I related to it, so I guess I'm ADHD or I'm autistic. And then when you talk to them, it's like,
No, you're
okay,
not.
you're a little different, but we're all
Mm-hmm.
a little different.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but you're not suffering. Life isn't hard for you because of this. You
Mm-hmm.
don't have a hard time making or keeping friends. You don't have a hard time going through education or getting a
Mm-hmm.
job or keeping a job for that matter. You don't have a hard time making your life work. You just kind of want a label on this feeling of being a little bit different.
Mm-hmm. I think you made
And
a ton of valid points. One thing that I want to add in the whole discussion about medication
mhm.
is I'm very much convinced that the pharma industry is
Oh, they're pushing.
actively working.
Yeah, yeah,
They
yeah.
they like to have pipelines and
Right.
they like to have steady pipelines. I mean, any
Mhm.
business likes steadiness.
Of
And
course.
so, the we've seen that in COVID. They would have pushed the COVID vaccine forever. That would have been such a great steady pipeline. It's just people don't really want to take it anymore. But with Ritalin, like, yeah, I feel like
But
they,
ironically, most people stop taking their medication within 2 to 5 years
yeah,
of
that
getting
that
their
that,
first
that that's
prescription.
also my impression. You
Hmm.
have people praising the hell out of Ritalin after they've been on it for a week,
Hmm.
but 2 years later they're like,
Yeah.
like the the thing that helped them kind of faded, and the side effects remain. So,
Hmm.
um,
And then it stops being worth it.
yeah.
I want to say, though, I just want to attach a comment to what I said previously,
Mhm.
because I realize as I'm saying this whole thing with like you just want a label on this feeling of being different, that can sound really invalidating.
Mhm.
And I don't mean it in that way. I want to be clear about that, that like if you have this feeling of being different, yeah, maybe you are a little bit ADHD, maybe you are a little bit autistic, but I also think the challenge right now is that because we live in a system where having a diagnosis means bag of money, support, access to certain aids, um, if we move into a system in which I feel different is enough to get a diagnosis,
Hmm.
then we're going to have such a large population with diagnoses that governments can no longer offer that bag of money. And then what happens is that the people who need the supports most, those get dropped on the floor.
I'm 100%
And
with you. We need some gatekeeping.
we need some gatekeeping for the official diagnosis, or at least for the access to support.
Yes.
Um, and I think that perhaps what we need is to introduce the thinking of, yes, you can be autistic or you can be ADHD without needing the diagnosis or without needing the medication. Maybe that's not what's going to help. And maybe, yes, you need the label, you need an explanation, or you need a different way of thinking about yourself in order to find out what works for you. But
Yeah.
if you are not disabled by it, maybe it's enough that you're just autistic or ADHD or whatever it is, but you don't need the stamp that gets you the bag of money from the government.
Yeah, I fully agree with you. I'm on the same page. I also think with autism and ADHD, it should be a double assessment. The first assessment is whether you fit
Mm.
in that category or not, and the second assessment is your degree of disability,
Mm.
ergo, what kind of supports can you
Maybe,
get?
maybe. And then maybe the assessment for your level of disability is something that can be repeated because, again,
Mm-hmm.
support
It
needs
can
change
change.
over
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
And maybe that's something that can be incorporated. But I also need people to acknowledge, though, that once you have a diagnosis, there are consequences.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes there are consequences people don't consider. So, for example, if you have an autism diagnosis, your life insurance is probably more expensive.
Mm-hmm.
If you have an autism or ADHD diagnosis, your options for work in the military, law enforcement, jobs like that might be gone
Mm-hmm.
because there, and these are just a few examples, but like there are things that because of the statistics that have been available in the research that is already done, and not the research that is done on the actual population of how many autistic people there really are, but the autistic people that were there at the time, that were diagnosed at the time the research was done. Because of that, rules have been put in place that may actually prevent you from doing something you want or that may make something more expensive for you. So getting a diagnosis is not always what you want.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we actually do see people who come back who want to be reassessed to get their diagnosis removed.
Mm-hmm. I want to add one thing. I
Yeah.
mean, you talked about money flow, and that's an important
Mm.
aspect. But
Yeah, unfortunately.
there's another thing that worries me with the current trend, and that is the watering down of diagnoses, or the
Mm.
watering down of phenomena. So, I just on Tuesday I put out a short video where I took a stand on people performing a meltdown in front of a camera for an Instagram reel. Um, which v-
Ironically, I filmed a meltdown back in like 2018. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019. 2019 2011 or something like that, maybe earlier
Your
even.
own?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
That was back when I used to do YouTube videos. It was I have internalized meltdowns.
Mm-hmm.
So they are much more tearful. And this was not like a full meltdown. Like I was talking through it.
Mm-hmm.
But I put it online and I left it up for many years because some of what I was talking about throughout that was quite reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I was talking about masking in part. And but I think internet culture back then was so different from what it is now.
Yes. Um, and the way you describe it, I can actually imagine it being useful. But when I see some person, they start to
Mhm.
wiggle a bit nervously and then they're proclaiming, I have a meltdown now, but I'm gonna record it so the world knows what it looks like.
Mhm.
My toenails start rolling up.
Mhm.
And it's very infuriating for me because being working in the context of school, I have to
Mhm.
explain meltdowns a lot. I have to
Yeah.
convince teachers that a meltdown is not a malicious act. Uh,
Mhm.
I have to convince parents. I have
Yeah.
to convince all of these people that this child who right now may appear horrible in
Mhm.
one form
And
or
maybe they're
another.
throwing things
Yeah,
or
they might be super
hurting.
aggressive. They
Yeah.
might and they might
Yeah.
appear capable because a lot of us, when we are in
Mhm.
meltdown, we're still really good at turning our words into daggers that really hurt.
Mhm.
And that seems skillful.
Yeah.
So it seems like the person is in control,
Yeah.
but they are actually in fight or flight mode. They are in panic
Mhm.
mode.
Yeah.
And when I see some of these reels where a meltdown looks like something you can choose to have or
Yeah.
something that is really trivial,
Yeah.
then it makes my work really hard. And I mean, I
Yeah.
got into this because I want autistic kids to be able to have access to a proper education.
Mhm.
And the most dangerous thing to their ability to get an education is usually the meltdowns. That is the
Yeah.
kind of thing that can end a school career. So
Yeah.
it's a touchy subject for me when people perform a meltdown
Yeah.
for
I mean,
Instagram Cloud.
it's for me, it's like there was a time when a couple of these videos started popping up and it wasn't necessarily autism, it was also Tourette's
Hmm.
um or yeah, a bunch of different ones. And it
But
happened
Tourette's, for
over
instance, makes sense. I mean, if you
yeah,
have a
yeah.
tick,
But
that is a
yeah,
short time thing that happens,
yeah,
and other than
yeah,
that, you are basically yourself. That's
yeah.
not what a meltdown is like.
No. But there was a time when some of these videos started popping up where
Hmm.
it felt genuine, where it felt, okay, I want to show the world what this is. I happen to have recorded this, not on purpose, but because I was doing something else and then I had a meltdown.
Yeah.
And now it happens that it gets put online. Okay. Um, it felt genuine and it had real educational value.
Hmm.
And I've definitely seen, I'm not on social media a whole lot because it's not good for my mental health.
Oh yeah, I have
Um,
to
I
reduce it
don't
as
think it's
well.
good for anyone's mental health, actually, but and the research does support that statement. I
Uh-huh.
just want to
Yeah,
point that
I
out.
know, I know.
Um, but now what I have seen, it feels more performative, in some cases at least. I'm not gonna make that a blanket statement. I'm sure there are people it doesn't
Hmm.
apply to, but some of what I've seen definitely feels more performative and more for the cameras. Where I have a real problem is parents recording their children
Oh yeah.
and putting it online. It makes me so angry on behalf of these children.
Oh yeah. It's something that ABA clinicians really like to do. And uh, I mean, as if ABA wasn't abysmal enough without that, but they also like to put videos of children who are way too young to be able to consent to that online.
Children cannot consent
Yes,
to being put online. And
yes.
actually the point, because even I know this is going to feel patronizing and infantilizing to any child who might hear this, and I'm sorry. I remember what it was like to be a teenager. Even if you are 15, you do not understand the consequences of
Mm-hmm.
something being online.
Yeah.
I'm almost 40, and sometimes I don't understand the consequences of something being online. And I'm not stupid.
Yeah,
I've
but
been online for a very long time. I should get it.
but you can't predict the
But
future and
the
the whole.
human mind, like you said, yes, can't predict the future, but also we can't comprehend the internet. It
Mm-hmm.
is not possible for us to comprehend what actually happens to information once it's online.
Mm-hmm.
We genuinely can't. Our brains aren't capable of processing information at that level.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you have to have such a deep understanding of technology, of social media, of the coding behind it, of algorithms, of social psychology, of the amount of knowledge you have to have in order to understand the consequences of posting something is actually, I'm not going to say impossible, but improbable for a human to have.
Yeah, and then tomorrow some
Children cannot have that.
yeah, and tomorrow somebody might invent a new technology that gets
Exactly.
added to the
Exactly.
mix and puts in a new factor that you couldn't even consider.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, I'll give an example, and this is okay, so this is tricky because in saying this, the person who said this to me will be able to recognize themselves, which puts it in an ethical conundrum here.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not personal information, so I'm going to do it anyway. I had a client at one point tell me within the last year, obviously, that they had gotten one of these AI chatbots to
Mm-hmm.
impersonate me.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm. And had a conversation with me through AI.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This is something I could have not predicted when I started to record YouTube videos
That's weird.
or the books I've written,
Yeah.
because everything I've written, everything I've made before AI chatbots were a thing, and certainly before generative AI was a thing that was available, I couldn't have possibly predicted that that was a thing.
Yeah, there's probably enough speech of you out there to uh, AI your voice. So in the sense that an AI
AI,
can.
my voice, but also in writing,
Mm-hmm.
you know? Yeah, yeah. But the thing is, okay, there's also a deeper discussion of, can an AI really actually impersonate someone? But even just the fact that someone did this with what I what I have said and created and put out there in the world. I could have never predicted that 20 years ago
Yeah.
when I started speaking publicly. about autism.
Yeah, I think things are gonna get very weird in the next 10 years.
So your point of someone could make some technology tomorrow that you couldn't have predicted today?
Hmm.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Hmm.
Very, very true. And so when people are posting their children online, my thinking is, first of all, your child can't consent. You don't know what someone is going to do with that content.
Hmm.
And even the options that are available today for what someone could do with that content, even if it is well-meaning, is actually horrifying. Please don't put your children online.
Yes, I think I'm gonna clip that. All right, let's
Okay.
let's put a stop mark here at the doomy and gloomy stuff,
Yeah, let's
and
do
let's get a
that.
little bit into your work,
Okay.
energy accounting.
Energy accounting. Yes.
Tell me something about it. So, first thing,
Mm,
so you have a system that is helpful at monitoring your own health and stress level,
mm,
and it's helpful for managing your energy levels,
mm,
for reducing stress and preventing burnout,
mm,
and eventually improving your quality of life. So let's start at the
mm.
beginning. How, as an
Well,
autistic person, can I monitor my own health and stress level?
mm,
And that would be part A of the question. And part B,
mm,
what if I'm an autistic person with a very low introspection, or
mm,
maybe I have very low sensitivity towards heat, hunger, things like that.
mhm.
So, what are good
Okay.
techniques for self-monitoring?
Okay. So I'm going to start this off by saying I started creating energy accounting like almost 20 years ago
Mm-hmm.
when I had to go back to school
Mm-hmm.
because I needed a way to survive.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that if I just threw myself back into school, I would break again.
Mm-hmm.
And I had already at that time dealt so much with meltdowns, with chronic depression, with suicidal ideation at a level that left me without any capacity to function
Mm-hmm.
in society. And so I thought that was the nightmare scenario that I had to prevent. I have to find a way to survive. I have to find a way to succeed at going back to school and achieving this thing that I really want to do, which is eventually studying psychology and trying to make a difference. I had big dreams, okay? I didn't think I was going to get there, but I thought no matter what, I'm going to try and I'm going to try to get as far as I can without breaking.
Mm-hmm.
That was the goal. Um,
That's actually that's actually a good strategy. Have a big goal, but then just focus on step by step.
yeah. And so it began as a day by day thing. Like, how do I feel? What's happening? What can I do today?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wait, I can't do anything today, actually. Oh, I guess I'm gonna stay home from school again. Um, and there was a lot of trial and error, a lot of I think back then I would call it failures,
Mm-hmm.
having those meltdowns, having those regressions. And I know that I know that with how I seem and with how I talk, um, sometimes people think, oh, you've always had a really high level of self-awareness,
Mm-hmm.
of introspection. You must have great interoception. I don't
Mm-hmm.
actually. I fought tooth and nail to gain those things because I was so chronically stressed as a child from age 6, 7 that I had no option to develop those skills. I
Mm-hmm.
was in survival mode for most of my childhood. Okay. So when you ask these things, and I explain, people might think, oh, but that's not possible because I'm not like you, or my child isn't like you. So that's what you're describing is just not doable.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to make it clear that what you see is a result of many years of working
Mm-hmm.
actively. Okay. Um, but depending on your self-awareness, your ability to describe emotions, bodily states, what's going on in my body right now that I can attach to an emotion or to a stress level. Depending on your ability to describe those things, starting to use energy accounting will look different,
Mm-hmm.
obviously. So if you have, let's say, fairly poor interoception, so your ability to perceive what is happening in your body, recognize the signals of something, alexithymia, your ability to attach words to the emotion,
Mm-hmm.
describe the emotions you're feeling, um, and introspection, self-awareness, like even just noticing those things in the moment, or let's say even delayed processing, where you may discover minutes, hours, days later how you were actually feeling in a certain situation, right? Um, if those things aren't working, great. First of all, that is either a sign to me that you've not had the chance to develop those skills.
Mm-hmm.
So there may be some chronic st like stress or depression, even burnout, or you may have had really rough times during times of your life that you would have normally developed those skills, or maybe something else is going on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But we need to start with developing some of those skills, usually with help, usually with a mentor or a psychologist or a caretaker or parent or something,
Mm-hmm.
to talk about how does it feel to be angry, sad, upset, stressed, or happy, even?
Mm-hmm.
How do emotions feel? Attach them to concrete signs that your body will have. So, do you get sweaty palms, for example, when you're nervous? Does your heart rate increase? Do you feel a lump in your throat? And talk more or less concretely, depending on the person, about those bodily signals. We may actually not know what sweaty palms feels like until we have sweaty palms and someone helps us point that out,
Mm-hmm.
right? So there's a lot of work to be done there. Um, and so that's the kind of bottom up process of learning those. That can take a really long time. There's also a top down version of doing this process where we work from behavior, we work from the things we can see. I had a meltdown on this day. Okay, what happened before? What happened not just on that day, but maybe also the days before that might have led to that? The more data we gather about what happened, the more we can find patterns in, oh, this is what takes your energy. These are the things that lead to meltdowns. These are the things that make you tired, sad, depressed, or that make you happy, energized, excited, interested. These are the things we can work with that give or take energy in different ways, right? Usually, I would want to do both
Mm-hmm.
because both of those forms of working will lead to higher self-awareness, better planning.
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's basically it's basically going through life as a scientist, focusing on yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
This is,
that feels sometimes almost narcissistic,
oh,
but it's
it can be a drag.
but it's or that, but it's something that over time really leads to results. And this is not something you have to do 24 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing. This is something where we know and we recognize when we do energy accounting. First of all, when I do it with myself, but also when I'm doing this clinically or when people I work with, colleagues of mine who work clinically with energy accounting, we understand that doing this work takes energy, takes time,
Mm-hmm.
takes cognitive, capacity. So this is not something we expect people to do all the time, every day.
Mm-hmm.
It's something where, okay, can we do this once a week? Or can we do a little bit of tracking on a daily basis? And if we forget sometimes, it's fine. It's fine. The data we gather is great. We don't guilt or shame people for not doing their homework, right? So whatever data we can gather is great. We are thankful for it. And then can we do something once a week to have a conversation about how is the next week going to look?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, here's what we expect, and here's what we expected from the last week. What actually happened? And then when we have gathered more information about what works and what doesn't, then we don't need to do it every week. Then
Mm-hmm.
we can do it once a month or once every 3 months if things are going well. Um, but yeah, it's a process of really learning more about yourself, learning more about what your signs are of what does stress look like for me, or depression or anxiety. What does health look like for me? What does well-being look like for me? What are the signs?
I feel like um, it makes the difference between a functioning and a non-functioning adult in autism and ADHD is the realization that you have to self-manage. There's no way around it. If you don't
Mm.
do it, you're gonna end up in bad places and you're gonna get hurt. You have to do it. You have to, um,
Mm.
and it looks different for everyone,
It does look different for everyone.
but you cannot get out
It
of it.
does.
If you don't take care of yourself in that way, your life will most probably be not good and be chaotic instead, and you will
I
be
mean,
overwhelmed a lot.
I know autistic and ADHD people who are not disabled by it. Like I
Mm-hmm.
know those people who are like, yeah, you're definitely autistic, but you're also not disabled.
Mm-hmm. Well,
And
some people have it
they,
well integrated just
yeah, and
by being
and
born
they
into
can
the
get
right
through it.
circumstances.
Yeah, and it's very much about environment as well.
Mm-hmm.
And like, so some people can get through life without doing so much of this, I think.
Mm-hmm. But
Or
but but
they
but
have the ability to do it somewhat naturally.
as you said, it's a lot about
But
having the opportunity to learn those things
yeah,
in the right windows. And
yeah,
some people got lucky. They
yeah,
had those
yeah,
opportunities.
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
But I definitely see a lot of people, especially autistic people, but also just neurodivergent people in
Mm-hmm.
general, who go through cycles of burnout and recovering and burnout and recovering and burnout and recovering. And they've been through so many sick leaves due to stress,
Mm-hmm.
or even months, half years, years of unemployment because they were burnt out. And every single time they go through the cycle, it gets worse.
Mm-hmm.
um, because our nervous system gets worn down from it.
Yeah, and because they come to certain conclusions, they have certain perceptions of themselves that might be
Yeah.
self-damaging. Yeah,
And they keep trying to live up to the expectations of society.
mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
And it doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole point of energy accounting is let's find out how we can make a life that works for you
Mm-hmm.
long term.
Yeah.
Because we know that this image that we have in our minds of what society wants us to do, first of all, sometimes that image is correct, but it just doesn't match with our capacity,
Mm-hmm.
either current or long term. And then sometimes also, and this is actually very common, our perception of the expectations is so much higher and so much more complex.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like a level of perfection we think we have to reach that
Yes.
is impossible, even for neurotypicals, even for neuromajority brains.
Mm-hmm.
And we think we have to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't exist in real life, but we
Yeah.
still think that we have to. And that actually keeps driving us into burnout,
It
trying
seems to
to
me,
do
it
that.
seems to me this is stronger or more prevalent in girls than women. And I totally agree with you. Um, I
Oh, but I
think
see it in men too.
Mhm.
Um,
I'll get
I
to
just
the
yeah.
girl women part later. I have a question especially on
Okay.
that. Um, but what I was trying to say is that perfectionism, which you just mentioned,
Hmm.
um, sometimes a perception change is really important. You don't try to achieve your goal.
Hmm.
Instead, you're going to aim for failing. But you have a strategy that when you failed, puts you back on track.
Hmm.
So I'm going to use a very simple example. Cleaning up your room. You're
Yeah.
going to start cleaning up your room,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden you find yourself in the kitchen doing something completely else.
Hmm.
And so one way to deal with that is before you clean your room, you make up a list of all the things that you want to achieve. You put
Hmm.
that list up on the wall. And once you have wandered off into the kitchen or done something else, you now know, I put up the list. I don't have to do the mental work to remember what I actually wanted to do. I just go back to the
Hmm.
list.
Yeah.
And so you build yourself a way of achieving the task that has failing in mind.
Hmm.
Just you make you have you're on the tightrope,
Hmm.
but instead of falling down onto the hard ground, you just put up a bunch of trampolines. So
Yeah.
whenever you fall off, you bounce back right up.
Yeah.
So I think that can be a key for some people. Put the perfectionism aside.
Yeah.
You're not gonna if you wanna get it right on the first attempt, you're never gonna get it done. And I mean,
Hmm.
you've written books. If you had put yourself under the pressure, I'm gonna pick up the pen and I'm gonna write down the entire book in one go and it's gonna be perfect, you would have never succeeded.
No. No.
So, um, and I write as well. And, the first steps of writing are really frustrating for me because I write something down and I know it's not good. It's not
Yeah.
up to the standard that I want. But I just made this and it's not good and I don't like it, but I made this.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
it is the stepping stone. Like the next day, I'm going to look at this again and I'm
Hmm.
going to read it and I'm going to see all the things that I don't like and I'm going to correct
Hmm.
them. And I do
Yeah.
that through a couple of iterations and
Yeah.
eventually it ends up good. But the
Yeah.
beginning is hard because I'm going to put something out that is not to the standard that I want. And just learning to accept that I'm putting out something that is not up to par yet. Just
Hmm.
learning to accept that. That is really helpful.
Hmm.
Allowing yourself to do things that are not perfect, that are not up to the
Yeah.
standard that you eventually want to have them, but understanding that this is a stepping stone that'll eventually get you there.
That it's a process.
Yeah.
But then I think also sometimes With practical things like cleaning your room, it's like, okay, there's the standard that I want,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's how much time and energy and capacity for doing things that I have today.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna get there.
Mm-hmm.
So instead, what's the most important?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's start by removing trash. First step.
Remove the things that other things can grow on.
Yeah, but like remove the things that actually should go in the bin that I can see right
Mm-hmm.
now.
Yeah.
Start with that. Okay, that's step one. Now you've already completed a task. Congratulate yourself for that. Acknowledge the fact that you did something rather than not.
Mm-hmm.
Mm? And if you got stuck already there and were like, no, I can't even, and then you went and did something else, then congratulate yourself on that.
Mm-hmm.
You acknowledged that you didn't have the capacity to do this thing, but you were able to do this other thing, even if that was relaxing.
Yes, everybody, listen to Maya. It's important that you learn how to integrate your successes because a lot of us go through a day and we've been
Mhm.
busy and we've done things and we achieved things, but at the end of the day, we're like, what did I do today? Oh, I didn't achieve anything. And you go to bed thinking bad of yourself because you have not yet mastered integrating your successes. That can be very important, and for some people it's something you have to actively learn. You have to learn to
It is.
remember the things you
Mhm.
did good.
It's actually it's actually very similar to training a muscle.
Mm-hmm.
Um, these are skills that if we don't teach our brain to focus on positives, it won't do it because our
Yeah.
brains are wired for us to survive. And because of that, our brains have a negative bias and
Mm-hmm.
will actually naturally focus on negative experiences
Mm-hmm.
more than it will focus on positive experiences. So we have to teach our brains. And even if we've taught our brain already to do this, we have to actually keep it going. Like we have to keep exercising that muscle
Yeah.
of focusing on good things that happened,
Mm-hmm.
things that made us happy or relaxed or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and focusing on I actually did do this thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, pat myself on the shoulder. Uh, and focusing on happy memories. Like if I know very deeply and sincerely because I have been in very deep depressions. I know how annoying it can be when someone tells you, try writing a gratitude journal,
Mm-hmm.
or try telling yourself three nice things that happened each
Mm-hmm.
day. I know how annoying that is. But on a neurological level, there's a reason why those things work.
Mm-hmm.
And so, even though it is the most annoying advice you can get when you are stressed or depressed or anxious, it really does work. And
Mm-hmm.
if you can't get yourself to do that form, find another form. I ended up doing a form of this that was to take one picture a day of something nice, something pretty, something that made me smile, something that was a nice experience, anything that was neutral or better. And some days it was the silliest thing
Mm-hmm.
that you would never ever think of as something good. It would just be whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And some days it was actually something positive. And some days I forgot,
Mm-hmm.
and that's fine. But it was something to do to train my brain to focus on something positive.
Mm-hmm.
And it's yeah, it's a neurological muscle, you could say,
Mm-hmm.
that we have to exercise.
Okay. So now that we've trained our muscle a little bit
Hmm.
in understanding ourselves, in understanding our own health and stress level,
Hmm.
um, what's the next step?
So then we go into now we actually want to make things better,
Mm-hmm.
right? And actually we do that from the beginning, but it's because all of it is happening at once because life is life, and you can't really segment it in that way. Um, so the focus will be on improving well-being, improving quality of life. And quality of life is such an interesting concept because there are factors to it that make it seem very complex. But what we know is that quality of life boils down to some fairly simple things. Quality of life boils down to feeling safe,
Mm-hmm.
feeling meaningful, both
Mm-hmm.
in terms of having purpose, but also having connections, being part of a community, for example. We know that it's to do um, with feeling love, with feeling that you can achieve something or that you are progressing somehow, that you're growing as a person. Um, it's it's this combination of factors. It's also your mental and physical health. Like if you are suffering from chronic pain, for example, that is definitely going to impact your quality of life. We can't get around that. If you do suffer from cyclical depression, sometimes called seasonal depression, but it's not always seasonal,
Mm-hmm.
um, that's going to impact your quality of life. We can't get around it. But maybe there are things we can do that will make it impact your life less. Maybe there are things we can do, strategies we can implement that will make life a little bit easier. And so what I tend to say is, first of all, don't aim for perfect
Mm-hmm.
because our concept when we think of quality of life very often goes to happiness, which very often goes to these images of, people jumping for joy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not happiness in the sense of quality of life. That's
Mm-hmm.
happiness in the sense of joy.
Mm-hmm.
And joy is an emotion that is short-lived,
Mm-hmm.
and we can't feel like that all the time. So instead, quality of life is very much about focusing on kind of the baseline of how we feel.
Mm-hmm.
We're always going to have peaks and valleys. I kind of, it's what tells us we're alive. You
Mm-hmm.
know, life is going to be life,
Mm-hmm.
and you can't eliminate the lows. But what you can do is try to make the average a little bit better. So we're aiming for 1% better, 2% better, whatever we can do.
Mm-hmm.
But we're not trying to do all of it all at once.
I would argue that it's better to aim for meaning if you want to be happy than to aim for happiness.
We actually have to do both. We actually have to do both. So, okay, um, there are terms for this.
Mm-hmm.
So the peaks and the valleys, we can talk about hedonistic happiness,
Mm-hmm.
which is very related to what is happening. How do I feel right now?
Mm-hmm.
So we put that to one side. And then we talk about the baseline, the more through line of how you feel about your life.
Mm-hmm.
That's the meaning and the purpose and the connection and all of that. We call that eudaimonic happiness.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, one is not better than the other. They're always going to coexist. So we have to both focus on how can we improve the through line
Mm-hmm.
and focus on doing things that make us feel better.
Mm-hmm.
So if if it makes me feel happy to have a really good cup of tea in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
if that's something that makes me momentarily feel good, great. That's a happy emotion in that moment on that day. The more of those I have, the the more highs I'm going to have compared to lows, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if we only do that, if we only focus on the hedonistic happiness, then we forget about the through line and the meaning and the purpose. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes meaning and purpose is hard. And we kind of just talked about this because you talked about writing books
Mm-hmm.
and how damn, that's hard. And you're doing something and it's not right and it's not perfect. And but we're going to go back to it and we're going to make it better over
Mm-hmm.
time. And then eventually we have something that we're proud of enough, at least, that we are willing to show it to other people.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes, if we're lucky, other people will give us feedback and say, what you did was meaningful. That made an impact on me. Or we know that it made an impact because we know that whatever we wrote or whatever we did or whatever it is, that it makes a difference to us and to the people around us or to the environment or to an animal that we know, you know, and those things that are not necessarily easy to do but which give us a sense of meaning and purpose. That's the eudaimonic, that's the through line. And if we only focus on that, then we can actually feel very depressed while we do those things
Mm-hmm.
because we stop focusing on getting those little moments of joy,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we have to do both. And then here's the added layer because I can't tell you, you person, individual, I can't tell you what is going to bring you eudaimonic or hedonistic happiness.
Mm-hmm.
That's individual. And so if you're trying to follow a script on how to achieve these things, it won't work. We need authenticity when we do these things. So we need that individual view of what is well-being and quality of life for me. What is happiness for me? Not what is happiness for everyone, for the average. Because no one is average. No one actually fits into a standard.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not interested in population. I mean, I'm also interested in population because that can tell us a little bit about how do humans work and what could we look at, but the details are different for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to focus on the you, the
Mm-hmm.
authentic, real you. And yeah,
There's autistic people out there who have difficulty accessing that,
yeah,
for instance, because of trauma,
hmm,
because they might have lost a sense of self.
yeah, definitely.
Um, do you have some advice on first steps when you are in a lost, confused place like that?
Mm, yeah. And this very often is linked to camouflaging, masking
Mm-hmm.
over long periods of time, or as you said, to trauma. Um, I'm gonna talk about it from the perspective of masking,
Mm-hmm.
because that's something many people do, even when it stems from trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Or yeah, and I just want to be clear that when I say trauma, I don't necessarily mean PTSD or complex PTSD because those things are not necessarily the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so okay. Um, Very often autistic people are socialized to act non-autistically.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and this can be through ABA training, but it can also just be being in the world and learning that whenever you show your autistic self, it doesn't go well.
Mm-hmm.
And so you learn to hide who you are.
But also, for a lot of people, they start out in a state where they don't know they're autistic. So they know
Hmm.
there's parts of them that
Yeah.
lead to
Wait, you
negative
might not know the
reactions.
labels. Yeah.
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 And so I would argue that masking is something that all people do. Just
Yeah.
regular
Yes.
social interaction.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
have a
But
persona, you don't always show your full self. So I would argue that everyone masks to some degree,
to
but I
some
would
degree,
argue that
yes.
in the case of autism, it has kind of a double layer because you're having a mask, but you don't know what you're hiding. And that would be, for instance, a
Hmm.
difference to someone, let's say, who is homosexual. They know I'm gay,
Hmm.
and the other person is not gay. They know what being gay means. It means loving other men, and they know the other
Yeah.
person is heterosexual. So they have words for all of it. They have an understanding for the whole dynamic.
Yeah.
Where with autistic masking, people might be a lot more in the dark. So
They
they know
might
there's
be.
this thing about them which can lead to negative reactions, but they don't
Yeah.
really know what it is. They sometimes don't know which parts of them are part of the thing that leads to negative reactions and don't have a name for it. And so,
It's true. It's true. But also, so for most people, masking is just a social strategy that they use.
mm-hmm,
For autistic people, it's survival.
mm-hmm,
Um, so there's a difference between masking being just a part of socializing. Like, okay, I know when I'm talking to this person, they don't like to talk about this topic, so I'm just not going to talk about that topic with them. And when I'm with these people, I might be a little bit more introverted because that's kind of their vibe.
mm-hmm,
And with these people, we can be a little bit more party goers or whatnot. Non-autistic people adapt to those social situations, and it is a form of masking, but it's much less stressful because it's still variations of their authentic self that they're showing. They're just kind of tweaks.
mm-hmm,
Okay. Um, the more extreme situations for a non-autistic person is something like a job interview where it's like, okay, now we're putting on our professional hat and this is performing,
mm-hmm,
right? But those situations are rare for the neuromajority person. For autistic people, it is often every time we are with someone who is not autistic. And even sometimes when we're with other autistic people, but we don't know they are autistic,
mm-hmm,
if we don't know that we are safe, we are in survival mode.
mm-hmm,
And it's very often more comparable to the the fawning response. So most people know about the fight or flight response.
mm-hmm,
Sometimes people know about fight, flight, freeze.
mm-hmm,
But there's a fourth one, which is fawning,
mm-hmm,
where you appease your attacker. You appease the threat
Mm-hmm.
in order to survive. Autistic camouflaging, autistic people pleasing
Mm-hmm.
is more akin to fawning in the sense that what is actually happening a lot of the time is that the the brain. Okay, I actually have to take a step back and explain this properly. Um, our brain doesn't distinguish between a social and a physical threat.
Mm-hmm.
Our stress response system isn't made to differentiate. So, a physical threat, a lion who might attack you, um, or a social threat, the potential for bullying, humiliation, whatever it might be, and psychological and emotional threats, our brain doesn't differentiate between those.
Which makes a lot of
It's
sense evolutionary because back in
exactly,
the day when you were cast out from the group, that was kind of a death
you would
sentence.
die.
Yeah.
Humans are very bad at surviving alone.
Mm-hmm.
We are a pack animal, we are a herd animal. We need other people. And so a social threat is potentially life-threatening.
Mm-hmm.
So autistic masking, when you know that showing your authentic self, and we don't necessarily know this consciously, in part because the amount of information we process consciously is actually very, very small compared to what our brains process unconsciously and what our nervous system process unconsciously. It's such a difference. It's hard to even comprehend. So we don't know necessarily consciously, but we are in survival mode. We know that if we show our authentic self, we might, quote unquote, die
Mm-hmm.
because that's what our brains are saying.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the amygdala is doing,
Mm-hmm.
right? So when we start to camouflage and mask our way through life, that's fawning, actually. It's living within a fawning response.
Mm-hmm.
It's constantly, please don't kill me. Please don't kill me. Please don't kill me. And I know that it sounds like an exaggeration, but on the neurological level, that's what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And so, no, sometimes we don't know exactly what's behind the mask. Sometimes we don't know how to unmask because we've lived like that for so long, we don't know how to not do it. Sometimes the mask gets so integrated, it feels natural almost. And that's, I mean, the safer we feel, the more we are outside of the fawning and more in, okay, I'm just being a people pleaser and I'm just adjusting because I don't quite know. I'm in unpredictable territory, kind of, but I don't feel this is life-threatening, right? But it it's still not safe, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the further away from panic you are, the more integrated the mask almost becomes because it okay, but this is just me, right? Um, it's complicated and weird, but when you discover you are masking
Mm-hmm.
and when you try to learn to unmask, it can actually be really difficult. It's not like just taking a mask off. Sometimes it's relearning, wait, what sensory stimuli do I like and not like? Do
Mm-hmm.
I like this form of stimming? No, I don't like that form of stimming. What about this one? No, not that one either. Wait, this one might actually work for me. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's sometimes this trial and error of like, finding out what you actually like. And
Yeah,
it's so difficult. And sometimes it requires trauma therapy because
yeah,
it's so stuck.
I know exactly what you mean. I've recently um, been to a self-help group in the vicinity here a
Mhm.
couple of times to meet other autistic people.
Mhm.
And there's this thing I encounter at times, and it really makes my heart ache. There's a at a self-help group, you will find autistic people having taken off. Usually, they will take off their mask
Mm.
because they know they are amongst themselves.
Yeah.
But you encounter some where they've taken off their mask, but pieces of their mask are still stuck to their face, like burned into their flesh, and they can't
Mhm.
take them off. And they behave in, I'm going to call it neurotypically socialized ways
Mhm.
and can't snap out of it.
Mhm.
And it, that's not always a bad thing, but sometimes you just see someone who's caught within themselves because of
Yeah.
convictions they have taken on that are not their own.
Yeah.
And it always makes me feel uneasy in a way
I
because
mean, it's really hard because you have to unlearn the mask and relearn yourself. And how do you rediscover yourself when you were never allowed to develop yourself?
yeah,
If you've been
exactly.
masking since childhood, you haven't been given the option to develop your own identity
Mm-hmm.
throughout childhood and teenage years and your young adulthood the way neuromajority people do,
Mm-hmm.
because you've been surviving
Mm-hmm.
by putting on that mask. And so, how do you then figure out who you are? And the thing is, like, it can be such a long process and it's so hard to do on your own that really we need advocates. We need people to advocate for us, not just on the political and the social media and those broader levels, but also in our daily lives. Like we need someone to be there and say, "You're allowed to stim.
Mm-hmm.
Here, I'll do it with you."
Oh yeah. I remember that at
You
a
know?
self-help group I talked about at the self-help that was way
Mhm.
back when I was discovering that I was autistic. I talked at the self-help
Mhm.
group about how I sometimes will spend a whole day, I will not shower. I will
Mhm.
stay in my sleeping clothes all day, maybe just put on a jogging pants or something.
Mhm.
And I talked about that sometimes I even do that for 3 days in a row.
Mhm.
And I was just kind of venting, But a couple of weeks later, another participant came up to me and she told me that it was really freeing for her to hear that because
Mhm.
now she was able to allow herself to do that because she had always been taught and
Yeah.
told it's a bad thing. If you
Yeah.
don't shower, that's bad. You're dirty. If
Mhm.
you stay in your sleeping clothes,
You're lazy.
you're a punk.
Yeah.
Uh,
It, all of those words that get thrown at us, and it's like, well, but what if it's comfortable that day?
yeah, I'm just
It
gonna
might be
allow
when
this.
it
I'm
might be
gonna
Wednesday, but if I have a day off, why can't it be Sunday?
exactly.
You know?
Yeah, it's my
Yeah,
time, and in
yeah,
my time, I do it the way I want to do it,
yeah.
free
So
from
we
the.
need those advocates,
Mm-hmm.
and we need those advocates not just to be with us and say, no, it's okay for you to unmask, but also sometimes to help us set boundaries because a part of the camouflaging is sometimes, a lot of the time, actually also doing things we don't want to do. So it's ignoring our own authentic boundaries. So actually having advocates teach us, help us to learn that it's okay to set boundaries and to figure out what are my boundaries even.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's something we also need. So it's not just unmasking in terms of showing and going out there. It's also masking in terms of saying, no, that's actually something I don't want to do, even though I used to do it to please everyone else. I
Mm-hmm.
really don't like it.
Yeah.
So it is really that figuring out piece by piece, what is my authentic self? What do I like? What do I not like?
Mm-hmm.
What am I okay with? What am I not okay with? What are my values that I've been maybe forced to ignore?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and rediscovering how can I be my most authentic self and still survive?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I recently talked to a mother. She's on the spectrum. Her kids are
Mhm.
as well. The
Mhm.
husband is not.
Yeah.
And in her family, they realized they no longer eat all at the same time.
Yeah.
And it helped a lot. I mean,
Mhm.
they have other social rituals where they come
Yeah.
together
Yeah.
and do it all together,
Yeah.
but not forcing everybody to eat at the same time was
Hmm.
something that worked really well for their family
Yeah.
unit.
Yeah. And sometimes it's even different from the time of day. Like some people, some families, okay, we're going to uh we're going to keep having dinner together because we like that.
Mm-hmm.
But we all actually wake up and go through our mornings so differently that breakfast is going to be
Yeah,
all over the place.
yeah,
Or vice versa, that the morning is really structured, but in the evening, people have such different energy levels that you know what? You just go and eat in your room. It's
yeah,
completely fine. I'm going to eat here. You're going to eat there, maybe at different times.
yeah.
It's cool because we
Somebody
have
might
different needs. Yeah.
somebody might need 2 to 3 hours calming down
Hmm.
after work before they can actually eat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was a good overlook over your energy accounting concepts. I was wondering, what kind of changes would you suggest for children? I mean, children might have
Mm-hmm.
even more or might have even lower introspective. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, with children, very often we're working with parents and with schools.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
so you
but
would argue some of the energy accounting can be externalized to someone else at that
yes,
age?
yeah, but also even for adults, I mean, we always will recommend, if possible, that there's some degree of assisted monitoring because other people see sometimes what we don't see ourselves
Mm-hmm.
about how we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
We don't necessarily always see that we are getting stressed or going into a depression before others. Very
Mm-hmm.
often, other people will see it first.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, even for adults, assisted monitoring is still really beneficial. For children, the degree of assisted monitoring can be higher, but um, what is tricky about it is that sometimes people will think that because a child is less verbal or that because they're young, that they can't contribute to talking about their energy accounting or exploring their energy
Mm-hmm.
accounting. And it's like, no, no, we just do it differently. We make it more visual. We use more pictures or we use blocks instead of numbers or
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is. But we have to still acknowledge that even a very young child, even a child who, even a person who is intellectually disabled or um, uh, someone who is non-speaking, they still contribute because they will still be able to show you something or tell you something that you didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
So it's so important to, even when you're doing assisted monitoring, even when you are using those outside sources to get information about a person's energy accounting, to still, to every degree possible, be listening to that person and trusting that person,
Mm-hmm.
even if, and I want to say especially, but I mean, it's not good. People are important. All people are important. But even if it's a child, still trust them.
Mm-hmm.
They know. They know. They may not express it in the way you want them to. And sometimes if you're not used to reading nonverbal communication, maybe it's harder for you to understand. But then you have to do the work
Mm-hmm.
to figure out what it is they're trying to tell you.
Mm-hmm.
It's always listening and trusting and involving them in the process as much as possible. But the exact form of how we do energy accounting, we can change that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, usually we use lists with words and numbers and we write things down and then we color code calendars and things like that. That might be too complicated for a 5-year-old or a 3-year-old or someone who has an intellectual disability or whatever. Okay, so we do it differently, but we can still do it.
Mm-hmm.
You keep the schedules, you keep all the planning and the numbers and whatnot, but then let's use 1 to 3 or 1 to 5 colored blocks instead. Or let's use pictures. The cat kit made by Kirsten Callison and Annette Nielsen and Tony Atwood. The cat kit is really good for exploring emotions,
Mm-hmm.
and they use a number of different smiley faces to show different variations of emotions.
Mm-hmm.
We can use those in energy accounting too. So it's not about doing it that exact way that we wrote it in the book. It's about, okay, we have the concept now. Let's find a way to make it work for this person.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense.
Mm.
Okay. Now, in regards to all of the things we just covered, girls seem to be a special case, or autistic women seem to be a special case.
Mm.
And I'll try to elaborate. I already picked up on your skepticism. So what I'm trying to talk about is here's something that I repeatedly experience with girls and
Mhm.
autistic women is that they will, and this is especially true for the high functioning part of the spectrum, they will
Mm.
create a mask
Mhm.
and they will wear that mask. They will wear the hell out of that mask. Where in a lot of biographies of autistic women, you find that they did that and
Mhm.
they did that and they kept doing it at expense of themselves,
Mhm.
started developing psychological illnesses. OCD comes to mind,
Mhm.
anorexia, what
Yeah.
have you, um, up to the point where they literally collapse, fall apart. They cannot do it at all anymore.
Mhm.
And for a lot of them, it means going to a clinic for a month,
Yeah.
um, having to quit their job, having to kind of reinvent themselves entirely and start
Mhm.
over at the age of somewhere between 20 and 40, where
Mhm.
when they've blown up.
Mhm.
And this is something that really, like, that that I think about a lot. What can we do to
Mhm.
prevent young autistic women from
Mhm.
going down that path? My feeling is that it is something where they go like, I'm going to do this at some
Yep.
at some point, some early point,
Mm-hmm.
and you can't get to them. Like, or
Mm-hmm.
I have with a lot of them, I haven't figured out a way to get to
Yeah.
them. Like,
Yeah. I mean,
um,
I know those people. Yeah,
mhm.
definitely.
So do you have any ideas on that?
So I think for young people who do that, and I see it with men too,
Mm-hmm.
by the way. I see men do it, and when men hit burnout, unfortunately, when they hit that collapse, unfortunately, they more often will go into addictions,
Mm-hmm.
or they will fall into homelessness,
Mm-hmm.
or they will commit suicide at a slightly higher rate, I
Mm-hmm.
think. And I think also they might not get diagnosed because we've gotten used to talking about this masking profile in women and
Mm-hmm.
girls, and we ignore it in men
Mm-hmm.
because we're still looking for the signs of classic autism in boys and men. And I'm not a fan of that because I think we're missing a lot of boys and men who use those masking strategies and who try to hold it all together, and then they do collapse.
Mm-hmm.
I'm seeing a lot of men get diagnosed around the age of 35 to 45.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. After complete collapse. Okay. So the problem, I think, is this level of perfection that we're striving towards. It's this thing that we think we're supposed to be. It's the performance culture. It's the get the grades, go to school, don't have absence, don't show weakness, just keep surviving by not being you. And this applies, unfortunately, not just to autistic people, because we also see in children in general much higher levels of, um, in Danish, the word is mistrivsel, non-thriving,
Mm-hmm.
diagnoses of anxiety, depression, stress, etc., are going through the roof in general.
Yeah, we have the
Um,
first generation that's not smarter and more capable, and then the one
and
was
and that
preceded by.
have a much higher rate of mental illness,
Mm-hmm.
much higher, astronomically. It is so concerning.
Mm-hmm.
And I think even before, because I mean now we're seeing it with the millennial generation, that they've held it together and now they're burnt out.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's this constant trying to survive through crisis after crisis and keeping it together and striving for a level of perfection and curating your life to the outside world so that they don't see the cracks.
Mm-hmm.
And the solution for me is we need to change the culture.
Mm. Yeah.
We need to change the narrative of how a human should be. We
Mm-hmm.
need to allow for the fact that even though we've invented all this fancy technology and all this complicated language and um, all of these rules about how society should work, we are just, as Tim Minchin puts it in a song, monkeys in shoes.
Mm-hmm.
We're just monkeys in shoes. We need to stop. um, we need to acknowledge our bodily needs. We need to acknowledge our psychological needs. We need to acknowledge our limits as well, and not constantly be trying for more and more and more and more perfect and more people, more friends, more likes, more production, more better grades. We need to stop.
Yeah, everything that ends with maxing, looks maxing, grades maxing, all of that needs to go.
But in general, this culture of performance that we have, where you need to work as much as possible. You need to make as much money as possible. You need to have the biggest house possible. You need to have as many friends as possible. You need to have like it's this intense focus on more and performing a level of human that isn't compatible with thriving and well-being.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to stop.
Mm-hmm.
We need authenticity. We need to look both inward at what do I actually need, and we need to look up from the screens and look at the world. We need to go outside in nature. We need to connect
Touch
with the
grass.
people around us. We need to allow ourselves to be communities again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think the Western mindset is really good at building efficient machines and computers,
Mhm.
but I think what we very much lack is a sense of harmony and balance in the way that it is more prominent in Asian cultures.
Mm. From what I hear about Asian cultures, it is even worse. I think Europe is on the area of work-life balance still slightly better, also compared to the States.
Mm-hmm.
Again, from what I hear, um, but we're not doing well.
Mm-hmm.
We are actually ignoring our human needs as a society. And when it comes to autistic people, ADHD people, a number of neurodivergencies, neurominorities, um, we are the canaries in the coal mine.
Oh, that's what I always say as well.
Yeah. And right now we are screaming.
Mm-hmm.
We have already died. Like if we're going in that metaphor, like the
Yeah.
canaries are already like and it's not good. It's
Mm-hmm.
not good. And yeah, we need to stop and pay attention to what we are and what we actually need in order
Mm-hmm.
to thrive.
That is both a statement about the particular group of autistics that I was thinking about, but also about the world in general.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay,
it
that
is.
was a nice resolve. Which brings me to my last and final question.
Okay.
What is autism to you in your own words?
Okay. Um, so this is actually something that has changed a lot for me in the last 10 years. Because I grew up with and started my career in autism communication at a time when the disability narrative was still very loud.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been pulling at my own understanding again and again and again and again. And where I am right now, and I don't think I've landed because I still don't think we understand what autism is. I don't think that's how human knowledge works or how science works. But where I am right now is that autism is a neurotype, a type of how the brain is structured. That means that our brains react more strongly to certain stimuli, that we respond more strongly to unpredictability and not having control of when and where and how things are unpredictable.
Mm-hmm.
And I know there's research that points to that sensory sensitivities aren't actually that we are more sensorily sensitive. It's more so that we react to sensory things more strongly, connected with the unpredictability. But I'm not sure I feel like something's missing there. I feel like there's something we don't know when it comes to sensory sensitivities. But really, I mean, for me, I think autism boils down to our brains process sensory and social information differently, and the unpredictability, the novelty, the things that cause stress responses, really novelty, unpredictability, a decreased sense of control, and threats to our ego, to our being, to our sense of safety, that we respond we respond more strongly to those threats. And on top of that, I think also our brains try to process more information because we don't filter information the same way. So a neuromajority brain, from what I've seen of the research and what we think we know right now, neuromajority brains are better at kind of filtering out and saying that information isn't relevant. Let's not spend our processing power on that. And autistic brains are more detail oriented when it comes to that, and more like, no, all information is important. So we're trying to process more. And the combinations of those things, I think, is what results in the symptoms that we describe as autism. And some people will be more disabled by it, and some people will be less disabled by it. But fundamentally, I think that's what autism is. It's a different way of the brain working. Like it's just a different neurotype. And it's not a negative and it's not a positive. It's just a way of being human.
Thank you.
I'm not sure it's a good answer, but
it's your answer. That's good enough.
I just think it's as an autistic person, I want to be able to say autism is this. But as a clinician and as an academic, I'm so tired of theories saying this is what autism is. And then, but it's not. We learn so quickly that, oh, no, no, actually that's not it.
Mm-hmm.
And science is constantly trying to figure out the answers to the questions. And I love that we are trying and that we are approximating truth somehow, whatever truth is. But I also think humans are so complex and so nuanced and so wonderful and miraculous that I don't know that we can simplify it to a truth. I think we have to acknowledge uncertainty and unanswered questions in the answers we present.
In order to describe a thing, you need to be bigger than the thing.
Yes. And
So
we're
we
not.
can't describe ourselves.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's, and so it's when I say, okay, autism is a neurotype, it's not better, it's not worse, it's just it just is. Um, it's because every
Maja,
single brain is still different.
your answer doesn't have to be perfect.
No, but no, it doesn't. But that's uh but I think that's the great thing about where I am right now is that I'm learning to accept that not only do we not know a whole lot of things in the universe, but we
Mm-hmm.
also don't actually know what autism is.
Yeah.
I
Well,
don't know what autism is.
I feel like the more we've talked about it, the less we know what it actually is.
Yeah, but the more
And I
we
was
know
not
what we
talking
don't
about the
know.
two of us, but I was talking about the general discussion that's
Yeah,
happening.
yeah.
Yeah.
But the
And
great thing is the more we talk about it and the more we don't know, the more we also know what we don't know.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm learning to embrace not knowing and not being able to predict what will happen with
Mm-hmm.
what we don't know.
Mm-hmm. Those were very nice final words. I'm gonna leave it at that.
Thank you. It's been great talking to you.
You as well.